Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan, a student reporter with Invention Convention Worldwide, and today I'm here with National Inventors Hall of Fame inductee, Dr. Rory Cooper. Hello, how are you?
Great to be here with you.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So could you tell me a little bit about what you do in your lab?
Yes, I create technologies for individuals with disabilities and veterans that they need that don't exist.
Awesome.
And I work with a wonderful team of engineers and clinicians and some counselors and some statisticians and other scientists, and then we work with a lot of students, and many of our people are themselves people with disabilities and veterans. And so our goal is really to work with people with disabilities and work with our veterans to make new inventions that they need, and that all of us can benefit society in general.
Right. Awesome. And so something that jumped out to me immediately is that you're working with a team that has a diverse skill set. You said statisticians, engineers, just all types of different disciplines. Why is that important whenever you're designing solutions?
I think diversity in all its forms are really important. So you want different life experiences, different educational experiences, different professional experiences to bring together to help solve problems. People come at things from different angles.
Right.
As an engineer, we look at, maybe you solve something in the time domain, but it might be solved, it might be calculus in the time domain, but you put it use a transform, put it in the frequency domain, it becomes algebra.
Right.
But you can think of invention the same way. If you're an engineer, you might want to solve the problem one way, but if you're a clinician, you might see the problem a different way. If you're a user, you'd see it a different way. If you're a scientist or a mathematician, you might see it a different way.
Right.
And that's great because that's how you best solve problems.
Awesome. Just different vantage points and more insights. So a more holistic solution. I love it. And another thing you said, not designing for people or treating them as a client, but you're designing with them as partners. And so what advantages does that give you as opposed to just designing for them solely?
So I think, the designing for somebody is it's always difficult because you're trying to place yourself in their position and trying to see how they face things. Designing with them is that you bring that to the table. And ideally, if you can get a person to be a person with disability and an engineer, or a person with disability and a scientist or a clinician, then the language is a little bit, their barriers reduced, and they bring that expertise as well. But the goal is to really form a team. And so we don't want people to be on the sidelines. We want to be members of the team.
Right, and I love that. So if somebody wanted to work with somebody with a disability and design an assistive device for them, but there's a language barrier or somebody may not know the technical jargon, what advice would you give so that they can bridge that gap?
Well, I think there's great tools to do that we can adapt from other fields. We use focus groups, we use interviews, we use surveys. We do what's called journey mapping as well. So you follow a person's pathways and where they want to do, where they want to go. But you can also use tools like storyboards. That's like a graphic novel, or we do mock-ups. You can see here, like a lot of the kids do, we use cardboard a lot.
Right.
But then you can 3D print and make models. And so these are just communication tools you can move throughout the process.
Right, definitely. And another thing you said that was fascinating to me is the things that are made in this lab, they often don't only benefit people with disabilities, but they also benefit the world at large. So can you speak a little more to that?
Yeah, sure. The idea, well, first, the more that we can integrate people into society and get them to participate, that benefits everyone.
Right.
But as we look at, for example, now we're working on improving electric vehicles to make them more accessible, or autonomous vehicle systems, or airline travel, and that makes everybody's experience. I just think about this. So, you've got, if it's a hypothetical, or just myself. I travel. If I can travel and make it easier, then my family can go with me. I can visit family, and we can go on vacation. It opens up opportunities that might not otherwise be there, and those open up commercial opportunities as well, because now we're buying airplane tickets and we're going off to some resort or business destination are coming here to the Henry Ford Museum,
Right.
and that benefits everyone. Or if you can integrate people into science, like we have some kids with disabilities here, and some other kids that are working with kids with disabilities or working with grandparents or others or friends.
Right.
They're both benefiting, and some of them get to come here and participate in Invention Convention, and so if you look, there's a lot of simple things like curb cuts and ramps and that curb cuts and ramps and stuff are used actually more by people with strollers and delivery people than they are by wheelchair users, but it benefits everyone.
Absolutely, right. And when I was back home riding my bike, I could think the curb cut that I could transition from the sidewalk to the streets smoothly instead of having to have a sharp drop off. So.
Right, that's another excellent example, and then that gets people riding bikes, reduces the impact on the environment, improves their health outcomes. We've done work on hand cycles and recumbent cycles to allow people with disabilities to ride along with family members and friends and get out on the bike trail. That also creates common bonds, right? You see people on the trail, you take a break, and now you've got somebody's interested in bicycling. You're saying, "Oh, you're interested in bicycling too," and I've ridden the Gap Trail in Pennsylvania several times, and there are people that's kind of a lifelong goal of theirs, and so you have those conversations as well. And then what you really learn is that people are people.
Right. And I love that. It sounds like whenever we create devices that can grant accessibility to people with disabilities, and the World Health Organization defines disabilities as a mismatch between somebody and their environment. Whenever we can bridge that gap and make it more accessible for them, it creates the space for human connection, which is really interesting. Yeah,
that's excellent. It's like I own my impairment, right? But disability is a shared experience.
Right.
And that's so like this museum is a perfect example, right? It's a big flat surface, which is great for me. You have to be careful because that's good for my disability.
Right.
If you have visual impairment, big open spaces are a little bit more challenging. And so we have to think about, that's why you want to do things with people with disabilities. Right. So you want to make it, depending on what you're designing, you want to be as inclusive as possible, right?
Absolutely. Right. And so in a world where, with the built world, for instance, it's often not made to include everybody. And so with it being physical and just infrastructure in place, how can we change it so that stuff that's already existing becomes more accessible for people?
Well, the first thing we do is make sure that anything we do new is accessible, especially like new home construction. And that we have it at least be visitable, which means come and stay the night.
Right.
Accessible means you could live there. And I think we need to make sure that happens as we do new building construction, things like that. Classrooms. We need to make sure that everybody can participate and everybody feels welcome, and not just become like note takers, but actually participate. Retrofitting becomes more of a challenge because you have to deal with. In some cases, with the historical aspect, and retrofitting tends to be more costly in general. But if you're doing renovations, that's the time to go in there and say, "All right, now we're going to make major changes to this building. How can we be accessible?" And be thoughtful about it. And a lot of times, especially in buildings and public spaces, you're really talking about zero-step entry.
Right.
Or a ramp, for example, and accessible bathrooms, and then to use whatever facilities, if they're office facilities or retail facilities, that you can use those, have that same experience, right?
Right, absolutely. And so, whenever we create new spaces, or we're renovating an old one, then putting it in during that. But what's the value in planning for accessibility in the beginning stages instead of having to go back and have an addendum or a bolt-on?
Well, so addendums or bolt-ons are usually never work out to be to live up to their full potential.
Right.
And the best opportunity is to start from the beginning and design with people with disabilities, right?
Right.
And then you get broad groups of people with disabilities, and you can do that. Especially when we talk about public spaces like parks or museums or public buildings or voting spaces or schools, all of those, thinking about how can we be inclusive, how could everyone feel like they belong, everybody be able to fully participate. Those are the things we need to really look at.
Absolutely.
When you get into retrofitting, so let me give a good example. When the metro the subway system in Washington, D.C. was built, they didn't think about accommodating people with disabilities. Right. And then later, when they decided to, they started putting elevators in and then started putting signage in. But the problem is now the elevators it's a bit of a Where's Waldo type problem of where are the elevators? And then not only that, where's the accessible entrance to get to the metro, to get down, to find the elevator, to get in? And so that makes, but if they'd thought about it from the beginning, then you just, you could follow the same traffic flow as everybody else, right?
Absolutely. That's great. And so say that there is a company or business and their current space, it's ADA compliant, but that's only the bare minimum. And you try to justify making something more accessible, but they say, oh, financially, we can't justify that because it won't bring in enough customers to generate a profit. How can we convince them that there still needs to be accessibility?
So that kind of makes sense in two questions. So the ADA is great. It's human rights law, and it has the Americans with Disabilities Access Guidelines, and it really has changed America and the world, for that matter, tremendously. But if you focus on ADA, then you sort of focus on the legal aspects of inclusion, when you really should be thinking about the moral and ethical aspects of inclusion, and in some ways the business aspects of inclusion. Right? There's 20% of the U.S. population of 350 million people has some sort of disability or impairment, right?
Right.
And also they have friends and family members as well, so it's a much larger portion of the population that's impacted. Right. And that impact, it's several $1 billion worth of the economy if you think about it.
Right.
So there's economic incentives, there's moral and social incentives, right? It's a human rights issue to a large degree. So you really want to not look at the ADA. The ADA is a great guideline.
Right.
What you want to do is, how do we make this an inclusive and participatory experience for everybody?
Absolutely.
And that benefits all parties. And so that's important. Then the other part is we need to transition so that we can facilitate inclusion and participation.
Right.
And that means that we encourage, if we look at our science education programs, that our students can be fully integrated of all kinds.
Right.
And also more accessible, right? So it's not just economically driven. That's because that's a common barrier for people with disabilities. It's a common barrier for the way that we finance our schools, typically through property taxes and things like that too. So that's another way to look at how do we. And then if you sort of use this universal design approach, that how do we incorporate the broadest population? Right. Then it benefits all in the end.
And so this is reminding me, there was a study done on a game called World of Warcraft. And so there's combat in the game, and they often require super complex hand movements and stuff. So it's not accessible to everybody who may have motor impairments, but they found that they were still able to be included in the community because it was a full-scale game, a full simulation. So farming and trading and tanning hide, things like that. People who didn't have fully developed or a disability in their motor capabilities, they would do that, and they're still included in the community because they were able to do something that contributes to the game and furthers it. So with universal design, should we focus on having a way for everybody to participate? And I guess an extension of that, is the ideal to have a way for everybody to participate in any way they might choose?
So in the ideal world, to make it so that people can participate with it. But I also like this concept of social capital, which is kind of what you're talking about in this World of Warcraft, right? Is that you might not be able to participate in one way, but you can participate in another way. So the idea of social capital is that everybody has something to contribute. We all contribute differently, and not everybody has got the same strengths. We all have different strengths, but we all have strengths.
Right.
And so the idea is that as a network, as a quilt, right, tapestry, it all comes together if you let everybody participate.
Right.
And so you might participate in different aspects of World of Warcraft, which I love as a great example because Steve Spahn was a student of mine. He created Able Gaming.
Wow. Okay.
And he was one of the drivers in about accessible gaming.
Awesome.
And he himself has some physical limitations. And there's two ways to overcome that, right? One way is that you can, find your niche within the game where you can contribute and and enjoy yourself and have that networking capability. And the other one is look at better user interfaces so that you can have more opportunities within the game accessible to you.
I love that. Because it's both in a bit if they improve the interface, then anybody can participate in the combat, but also with social capital, everybody can contribute. And so they're in the community and they're getting that interaction. They're able to network, like
exactly.
you were saying, and I love that. Awesome. So if somebody wanted to participate and design for accessibility, not as a standalone, but incorporate it into a project they're working on or an invention or a store that they're doing, what advice would you give them if they don't know where to start or where to find somebody to work with them in doing that?
That's a great question. The answer to that is actually there are a lot of organizations that work with people with disabilities and advocate for people with disabilities and veterans with disabilities and reach out to them. They're always looking for volunteers. They're always happy to find bright people that work with them. Easter Seals, for example, whom I've worked with over the last 30 years, and they have affiliates all over the country, and they're actually into gaming now. They're even looking at inclusive gaming, but they do employment, they do schools, they do assistive technology service delivery. They're excellent. There's other organizations like the Association for the Advancement of People with Disabilities that are also all over the country and advocate for people with disabilities. And they're also looking at technological advances. The World Institute on Disability, which is headquartered in Berkeley, but supports the whole global programs.
Interesting.
The International Paralympic Committee has also national affiliates. And if you're interested in sports and travel, that's another opportunity. Then there's great veterans organizations like the Paralyzed Veterans of America, Disabled American Veterans, and Wounded Warrior Project, American Legion, that are also always looking for volunteers, and they all have projects, and people that would be plugged into inventing, and so really, and the key there is volunteer, find the mutual interest, right?
Absolutely.
Volunteer, support some of their activities, and then they will in turn support some of your activities.
I love that. It's like a symbiotic relationship. You're both helping each other, and it's for a good cause. So it's improving the world, which is great.
Right, and there are many, many, many other organizations. Those are just a few examples that are great to reach out to.
Right. Thank you for that. And so you're at the National Invention Convention at the Henry Ford Museum. What's it like to be here?
That's great. It's funny, I don't live that far away, about a 4-hour drive, and this is only the second time I've been here, so I'm a little embarrassed about that. So it's great to have the invitation. That's wonderful because this is a museum about innovation and invention, as well as having all these kids from all throughout the world and come and have their inventions and share with them, and it's nice to they make it fun, and see these see teams, and I got to sign my trading cards and hand out posters from the patent office, and I've probably talked to several hundred of the kids here, and it's great. They're excited to be here. Their parents excited to have them here. Some of them have teachers here. and I was a judge, and that was great to see it from that perspective. One, how much work the participants put into their inventions and their ideas, and the whole well-rounded part about it, right? How they have to study it, and do their lab books, and do their poster and their presentation, and they have to have. Some actually most of them actually get to the prototyping stage if it's a rough prototype, but also talk to the other judges.
Great.
They're from industry, they're from academia, they're from schools, and their perspective, and it's also just great to see that they'd be willing to volunteer their time and how seriously they take it.
Right, and know like the amount of time that's dedicated. So me being able to participate in Invention Convention and now being on the other side of it, I'm not really helping put it on because I'm not behind the logistics, but just being able to highlight the stories of the students. I mean, you've gotten to talk to several hundred. I've gotten to talking to a good number of them, and they're incredible because they're not just their invention, but they're a person behind the story. Like you said, people are people, and so hearing about what fuels them, what drives them, what inspired them to create something, it's so inspiring to see. So, like, does it give you hope for the future?
Oh yeah, certainly. I love when that's the best part about coming to these events. And these events is you see these young people who are just really excited, motivated. What's also great is, I am an athlete. I participate in sports all the way up to the Paralympic level, but this is kind of a sports opportunity for them. I've done FIRST as well, the robotics competition, and sponsor teams for that, and even won regionals and gone to nationals and placed a few times. But
incredible.
But it's great to have these options for kids because kids are different and young people are different and they have different interests, and you want to be able to support them as well. And it's great when you have something that's an exciting opportunity like this is list two. To me, also meeting was pretty awesome. Some of them are pretty clear. They're in their business suits and they're looking sharp. And I mean, it's actually kind of funny. The high school students tend to be a little more casual. They're in t-shirts and polo shirts, but you see, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders they're ready. I mean, they're ready to sit in the C-suite already.
Exactly.
They're already, and it's also kind of cool to see some of the regional flair. So some cowboy hats and polo ties and suits and ties and others, that wearing Hawaiian shirts and casual wear. So it's all you get sort of the different vibe. You can see where they're coming from, and some of the inventions are really remarkable. You really enjoyed from all the way from magnetic tie to
yes. It was awesome.
So to using algae to take CO2 out of car emissions, and some school systems to make schools safer, to make wheelchairs better, to make canes better, from fishing to hunting to all kinds of. That's the other thing. There's really kind of no limits, right?
Right. It's just everything under the sun, which is incredible to see. For the most part, in the future, we know that there will be solutions for problems in every sector.
Yeah, and it's kind of the focus issue was a little bit about, how could we help people in the planet? But that's pretty broad.
Absolutely right.
But I like that because you could just see how the participants brought that creativity.
Right. I love it. Wow. So you're talking about the regions and the different vibes. Do you have a favorite one?
No. I mean, I'm lucky. I grew up, was educated in California, but then we lived in Pennsylvania for a long time. I spent some time in Europe in the Army. So, to me, it's, and I think I just like the fact that you see the cultural diversity, and it's also great that there's boys and girls and people of color and people with and without disabilities here too, and so they're all all excited, and like they did when they did the picture this morning. It's great. They got their T-shirts on, and they've got it kind of organized by height, and it's great. And then of course they do all the regions of the states afterwards.
Right.
And to me, it would be just nice to see, more of the states get more engaged in this, right? So
Absolutely.
they're like every state's represented, but not every state has a program. Right. Some are regions, some are states. And then maybe see more global participation.
Absolutely, right. So I know that there's a separate global competition after this one where a couple finalists get to go to that. I think it's called Americas this year. So from North and South America, people will be coming. But I love what you touched on because we've talked about how important it is to have diversity. How do you see us getting more people from just every state here and getting more states to participate in invention education?
Yeah, well, I think we need to work nationally on getting invention education be part of the, getting the Department of Education to support some of that. Getting schools to look at how the invention education really does actually sort of cut across a lot of different areas of science and technology and business and and actually the social sciences as well. And why that could be a tool to integrate that knowledge. Right. To get started earlier as well. And also, I think it's a motivator.
Absolutely.
As well. So it's just good, I think, to just keep moving, working with educators and school districts. One thing that probably could benefit here is maybe get more political involvement. Maybe ask some state representatives and senators to come in and visit the kids from their area just to learn about what amazing things young people can do, right?
Exactly right. And whenever you get representatives involved, they want to know that the state's going to be in good hands and that, they're going to be innovators. And if they see what's happening here, just the incredible inventions, the fact that problems are being solved, I definitely think that they say, okay, we need to support this however we can because this is going to drive the industry of our state for decades to come. So,
yeah, I mean, even just on a personal example, when I was a little kid, I was my grandparents went up to see the opening of the Oroville Dam in California. Right. And Ronald Reagan was the president. And one of the things he did is, they're getting ready he's getting ready to have a press conference to open the dam, and then he looks out in the crowd. He asks all the little kids to come forward. And he was clever, right? He was an intelligent politician. He made it all the way to the president. And he said, this dam is for them, right? This dam is for the future. Wow. And that's what this is here. This really is here, right? It's in many ways, it's about the future of America. And what do you really want to stimulate in America for its future is young people to be engaged and support invention and innovation.
Right, right.
And political leaders have got to love to come out and see that there are these just bright young people that they want to be engaged.
Yes. And I remember now. So, like with inventions, these inventions are incredible. How important is the storytelling behind the invention to frame the problem, to spread just the importance of not only invention, but the fact that kids are creating inventions that can help the world? How important is it to storytell and craft a narrative that we can push out to the public to see, like, we need to adopt this?
Well, I think it's critical to tell the story of the narrative of the invention and of the inventor. Yes. And because a lot of times they're both pretty amazing stories. Right. It's also good to ask the participants about their story of the invention to sort of impress upon them the fact about you want to be asking questions, you want to make sure you're solving a problem that's important to somebody. Right. And just to stimulate critical thinking. Because that's really, in one way, a lot of for most of the participants here, really the main thing is to get them excited about continuing on to be creative and be inventing, and also be critical thinkers. Right, right. And just to stay engaged. So telling their stories, telling the stories of their invention, hopefully you can affect, thousands, if not millions of young people, besides just the ones that can make it here.
Absolutely.
right? The whole idea is that this is a small set of the group
Right.
of the kids, of these young people, but you really want, but let's get it out to as many young people as possible, get them excited. And, largely the real benefit for society is when you have this engaged, intelligent, innovative group of new young people coming forward. But also is you want to get the school systems engaged and excited and innovative as well.
Right. I mean, we see how incredible these few hundred projects are. Imagine millions of children working on projects like this, and great inventions will come out of it, absolutely. But the fact that they're familiar with the process, and as they grow up, they know that they have the power to affect change around them and solve problems that affect people that they care about and even themselves. Imagine what can happen in America.
Right.
Imagine what can happen in the world. Incredible. Incredible.
Yep.
Great.
So hopefully the next Einstein or Edison is out there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they might be here right now.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Dr. Cooper. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for including me.
Absolutely. And on behalf of Invention Convention Worldwide, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.